everybody. Welcome back. It's Twin Cities Live. Kelly Hansen is here. Okay, a Twin Cities tradition. It takes place every Christmas on 45 TV. Maybe you know this, maybe you love it. It's the annual Yule log, and it turns your TV into a wonderful, crackling, cozy fireplace.
The Minnesota Beef Council has a similar option. The drool log turns your TV into a rotisserie. Your guests will be drooling before you can put the real thing on the table.
Oh, I love this. Throw this on at a dinner party. Isn't that great? The Minnesota Beef Council is here. They've got 3 different roasts that are not your standard prime rib. We welcome their executive director, Karin is back with us.
Hi, Karin.
All righty.
Okay.
Walk us through here. You've got 3 different cuts of meat here, and you know more about it than we do.
3 different cuts of meat, and we're very familiar with a prime rib. That's kind of a quintessential holiday roast that most people serve.
Right.
And that's, I will recommend it till the day is done. I mean, it is a wonderful cut of meat, but some people might be a little intimidated because it is a little bit more of an expensive cut.
Yeah.
So
it feels like an order out sort of a cut where because you do have to invest a little bit, and you just think a restaurant is going to do this better than I, but you would argue that it's not overly intimidating. You can really execute it at home.
Truly. I am usually one that doesn't follow recipes, and with this I would follow a recipe because it's kind of something you maybe make once a year, maybe twice. The big tip I have for you with this is there are 2 options. There's either bone in or boneless. Bone in looks beautiful, but boneless is easier to cook and easier to cut. So I would recommend boneless for the most part. And talk to your butcher because they're taking orders now. And it's one of those things you don't want to wait until Christmas Eve.
Yes, that would be a bad thing.
Just stop by the butcher and say, "Oh,
hey,
I'll
just take one of those."
No, that doesn't happen.
No, and that way they'll hold it for you, and they'll probably set a pickup date where you could pick it up a couple days beforehand. If you do get it early, you can freeze it. But just like a turkey, bring it out of the freezer several days in advance because it will need to thaw out. So we'll get back to that.
That's prime rib 101. What's the middle cut you've got there?
So the middle cup is actually a top sirloin roast, which I've talked about sirloin before. It's one of the most lean cuts, very versatile. It goes great with stir fry. It's a great steak option, but actually it's quite an impressive roast, and depending on what you add to it, it can really impress your guests, and not to mention it's a much more affordable cut. So if you're a little intimidated with the price point, that is a kind of the butcher's recommendation for an affordable option that's still going to give you a great eating experience.
Now, I don't know if I'm seeing this right. So, like, you have all this marbling and, like, this good, yummy fat that injects flavor into these 2 cuts. With that lean sirloin, though, you don't see as much. So I'd imagine you're running a risk. You got to be extra mindful, making sure that you don't overcook that, and then that's going to get a little too tough.
You know, and that's probably the rule for all of them. Even though there's a lot of really good external fat and good marbling, overcooking it is really the biggest mistake.
Been there, Kel?
Mine are always too tough. I do a lot of crock pots, so that might be the reason I might just set it and forget it.
Yeah.
And
I think the problem is you don't want to serve somebody something that's rare if they're not comfortable with it. But the glory of these cuts is at the end, you're going to have a more well-done piece. In the middle, you're going to have a medium rare cut. So it kind of appeases the whole crowd.
I like that. What's this final cut that you've got?
And this last one is actually a strip roast. So it's called a Manhattan. It's kind of a fancy name.
Oh, fun. I like it.
It's a strip steak, essentially. So each of these, they're going to portion it out, probably 6 to 8 ounces per person. The butcher does a great job of wrapping it for you, and that can kind of serve as a guide for how you're going to cut it. So don't be afraid to ask your butcher for the exact amount you want. Ask them what options you'd have, and if they have any recommendations for recipes. But Beef is What's for Dinner has a ton of recipes too. So
by the way, the takeaway from all of that, and we say this all the time, but don't be afraid to talk to your butcher. They want you to. They're longing for their personal interaction.
They love that.
They would like that.
I love that. What do you put on it?
Kelly talked about doing slow cooking. Quickly, give us some cooking tips and the sort of what you would cook your meat in.
So cooking tips, we're going to do it in the oven, and I know there are some recipes for prime rib where you crank the oven really, really high and then you shut it off and don't touch it. From a food safety standpoint, I would recommend cooking it at 325 or 350, and then depending on how big it is would determine how long you're going to cook it. You're going to use a roasting pan similar to what you would make your holiday turkey in.
What's this situation here?
This kind of keeps it up off the ground, off the bottom, so it doesn't get burnt on the bottom, and it kind of gets that full circulation of cooking
and then
around
it's
the
not
outside.
sitting, I mean, it's not sitting, I feel like, in its juices, which can be good, but also, I mean, then it's up and nice, and it's circulating. Ooh, what you got there?
When in doubt, remove the guesswork and get a digital thermometer.
Yes, and there actually, this isn't one, but there are some that you can have in the oven while it's cooking.
Oh, really?
So then it can honestly, sometimes they talk to your smartphone
Yes, they'll touch your
Yeah,
smartphone.
yeah.
Yes. Sorry,
I'm not
Kelly, I'll
that
put
smart.
that,
Put
sorry.
that away.
Looked like I was going to poke her. Okay, very quickly, let's go through our 3 cuts, these finished cuts. Ladies and gentlemen, drum roll on your thighs, please. Here is the beef rib roast with red wine cherry sauce. Oh, look at
We
that.
need to put the cherry sauce on. Is this the sauce right
The
here?
cherry
Man,
sauce, and I've
Shubbits.
also saved some of the au jus. So everything that's at the
Gosh,
bottom
is that
of your
what this
pan,
is?
save that because that is perfect
Oh.
as a side dish.
Oh, Merry Christmas. That is really good. Drum roll. Here is your lemon garlic roast with herbed oregano horseradish sauce.
Okay, we got it right here. Ooh, it looks really good, but I bet you it tastes so good. I gotta taste the horseradish.
And we have some horseradish if you're into it.
Drum roll. Here is your nut crusted top sirloin roast with fennel radish salad. Oh man. Listen,
Yummy.
I have an idea, Karen.
Okay.
You leave all this here and we'll take care of it. Sound good?
I already told the camera guys there's some leftovers in the back.
You got it. I like that. Hey, check out Minnesota Beef Council's social media pages now through December 18th for your chance to win great prizes, including today's prize, a cutting board, cookbook stand, and dishcloth. All of it. Me, keep going. You have too big of a bite. And if you're ever in a dinner rut, head to mnbeef.org. Hundreds of free recipes. Big thanks to Minnesota Beef Council for sponsoring our show.